Blessings. Thank you for joining in. Tell somebody else to come along. It's a brief conversation tonight. Blessings, blessings, blessings. Pray your day went well. I see numbers, but not names yet. Again, we won't be on long tonight. Gradually easing our way back into our weekly discussions. And I'm glad you thought enough to come and join along with us on today. Tell somebody else to join in. Have some fun with the conversation. What happens when the problem is really you? So often we talk about loving the me I see, and we tell about people who need to accept us flaws and all, and how we have to learn how to love ourselves and not allow people to make us feel like we don't exist. But what happens when the problem is really you? I'm really interested to hear what some of you will say tonight in answer to this question. What happens when the problem is really you? Hey, Tika. What happens when the problem is really you? Loving the me I see is all about learning who you really are, unapologetically, flaws and all. Taking the stance on self love and self care, learning how and when to put yourself first without feeling guilty. But what happens when the problem is really you? It is so easy. Hey, Angelica, it is so easy, to point fingers and say what somebody did to you. And for some who are just now entering the journey of loving themselves, for so long we've carried the crutch of those things that happened to us in our childhood. And when I say carry the crutch, meaning that we've made it to our adult life and we're still alive, but yet we're holding on to what happened to us in our early years as to be the reason why we're not as far along as we feel we should be. And when you start taking care of yourself, people tend to say you bougie, you overly confident. But no, there's nothing wrong with making a definitive decision that I'm getting ready to find out who I am, and I'm going to learn how to love me, flaws and all, because you can't love part of anything. That's the whole thing about being loved or being in love. You can't take part when you're talking about being in love. And I've learned how to be in love with my own self so that when somebody comes along, I know what I'm expecting and not just waiting to see if they're going to give it. So, what happens though when you do all of this self love, self care, all of the things that we tell you to do, and you find that absolutely nothing has changed? Do you ever consider the fact that maybe you really were the problem after all? It's not something many people want to, agree to, but sometimes we just have to accept it. We say to our kids all the time, if this person and this person and this person is saying about you, everybody can't be wrong. Eventually, you got to start looking at you. So that's the aspect I'm coming from. What happens when the problem is really you? Angelica says, that's what I'm struggling with now. It's hard for me to take accountability, even though I know I'm wrong, but I hold on to the trauma. Well, actually, Angelica, it takes a lot for you to say what you just said because now you're identifying what the problem is, and now you just have to deal with the steps that it takes to resolve that problem. One of which, as your latter part of your statement, you got to learn how to let go. Yes, the trauma happened, and sometimes um, people feel like when we're telling you you got to let go, you yes, that happened, but you got to let go. We're not trying to make light of what you've been through, nor are we trying to make you feel like, um, you know, it doesn't matter that it happened. What we're saying to you is you've made it all these years after the fact, which means that you're stronger than you thought you were. And so now we have to peel off the layers of what happened so that the sting is not as great, especially for those of us, who are children of God. When we say that we have faith to believe, now faith is the substance of things hoped for, evidence of things not seen. Scriptures like, without faith, it is impossible to please God. All of the scriptures they give us when we are kind of like low in spirit and they're trying to uplift us. Um, we have to, and I can speak for me, I was handled wrong as a child by some folk. I was raped, I was molested, and for years, I kept on saying that that was the reason why I wasn't as far along as I thought I should be. And still, sometimes I still feel like, hey, if that hadn't happened, but then I had to go back and say, well, it's not so much as if it hadn't happened, but if I had had the resources, that I have now, or if I blessed Sister Tori, or if I had somebody to listen to me the way we are here to listen to others, maybe it wouldn't have taken so long for me to let go. It's not that you have to forget that it happened. What you have to do is not allow it to consume you and not allow it to run your life, as most of us um, who didn't have the proper knowledge or the how to or the solutions or suggestions, we just kept on riding along. We didn't realize that we could take control of the narrative. We were just, in it so long that we felt like that was our narrative. So, how do you now move beyond that? Um, Sister Angelica says, I am a problem, and for the last couple of days, I've really been doing some self reflecting. And that's what we have to do. Let me tell you something. It was not easy for me to let go. It wasn't. I'm not going to act like it was. It was not easy for me to let go because um, I did not realize that it was the anger and the rage of that trauma that was actually getting me through life. So I thought, it was that thing that helped me to keep that wall up. You can get close, but you ain't going to get but so close because I'm not doing this again. I'm not going down this road again because it's different when things happen to you by someone you don't know. But when it happens through people that you supposedly love and should trust and should be protecting you from this thing is actually the ones that's causing it, you're kind of like um, just out there, feeling abandoned or feeling dropped, so many things, and so now let's move forward for a little while. And you get to a place in life. For me, it was after age 30. I don't know how long it took nobody else, but it wasn't until I was after age 30 that things really started making sense to me, and I started taking control, of my own narrative. With the help of God, you didn't realize that, hey, all these years, that's what was fueling me, that thing that I wouldn't let go of. So sometimes when I could have been soft, my answers were sharp. Hey, Kendra. Or sometimes when I should have been listening, I was talking because I was so used to not being heard that I wanted to make sure that everybody heard me this time around. And so there are different things that happen that causes that light bulb to go off and say, hey, it doesn't really have to be that way. And then what happens um, when you feel like you're healed, or you've been made whole, and yet problems of that same situation, that same scenario tend to haunt you? You got to wonder if the problem is them, or is the problem really me? So what happens when you get to that place where you really start wondering, like, is it me? you know I know what happened to me, and I claim the rights to the ownership of that. As we say, we don't own the rights to that, or we own the rights to stuff that we've been through, but do we have the right to continue to hold on when the Bible main focus is forgiveness and peace? So what do? Tanisha says, when the problem is really you start to take accountability with the decisions you make. Even though you've been hurt and abandoned, you still lack self accountability. And I have come to the realization that the decisions that I make or have made cause me to be in the place of regret, or have caused me to be angry, because I know I could have, and I know that I can do better. And so, Tanasia, I would agree with you with most of it, but you're putting a lot more blame on yourself than you have to. Yes, as I just stated, we got to take the sting away. So if we remove the crutch, we have no longer that handicap. Now we have to figure out whether we're going to limp the next few steps, whether we go, hey, Shay, whether we're going to drop to the floor and crawl, or whether we're just going to stand still till we get our balance and then move on. You know, that's the way that I take it day by day. Have I forgotten all that I went through? No, I have not forgotten. But what I have decided is to not let it control my very being. And, it wasn't until, starting therapy and stuff that I realized that it was that sting. It was that um, anger that I never got to voice, because we just were brought up in a different way as I was coming up. And so uh, the grown-ups were the winners, whether they were the truth or not. And so you just were taught to shut up. um, Nothing should come out of your house that started in your house. We talk about this all the time, but when you get to the place where you want to really become whole, you have to take off some of the masks, well, all of the masks, but you can't take them all off at the same time. Many of us fail because we try to deal with everything all at once. No, you have to pick. You have to decide, this is what I'm going to focus on. And you got to compartmentalize. I'll put this over here till, I get ready. And I'll know when I'm ready when I reach this point of that. And so you have your own strategy to your healing, to you becoming whole. Um, and so when you become whole, I mean, truly become whole, and you can face who you are, because some of us still come out saying, I don't like who I have become, or I don't like who that person was. If truth be told, most of us who would just really take accountability would probably find themselves saying, I find it hard to believe that that's where I was. Oh my God. When somebody brings it to your attention, or like I said, with therapy, they help you talk through some things, and then that aha moment you have says, wow, how long ago you could have been out of this? How long ago you could have been feeling better about yourself? But what happens when after you finally get to that point where you do feel better about yourself, the question now comes, well, was the problem really me? Because there are some people, if you're like myself, um, where situations were very toxic, that they're no longer here to have that discussion. They're no longer here to help me understand their point of view. All I saw it from was a painful eye. And so all I could react to was a painful eye. I did not respond, I reacted to a painful eye. That eye that took me back into what happened, that eye that took me back to when my mother didn't understand and didn't believe, that eye that took us back to the place where whatever the adult said was the truth, no matter whether it was a lie or not. That eye that took you all the way back there. And then, you get to the place where you've had a conversation with some or other. Some people seek professional help with therapists and others don't. They talk to their pastor and they're happy, or they talk to their guidance counselor and they're happy. But me and my best to tell people all the time, Jesus in therapy works miracles. But what if you don't have Jesus or therapy? How do you um, deal with what was? How do you know which parts uh, could have been dealt with a different way? How do you keep from blaming yourself? The main thing that happens to people, especially those who have been molested or sodomized or, raped, they tend to blame themselves. Well, what was I doing? What did I say? How was I walking? What was I wearing? And sometimes it had, well, most times, it had nothing to do with that. It had everything to do with the mindset of the person who caused the offense. And sometimes it becomes a little too late to find out that, hey, it must have happened to them in their life, but that's not where you think what you're thinking when it's happening to you. You ain't going that far back. You just want to know, why is it happening to you? What have you done? That's the first thing you say, whether you be male or female, boy, girl, woman, or man, or adult. You have these things that happen, and you're wondering, you know, did I cause it? And are you really ready to unravel that? Because you gotta be ready. There's going to be so many different emotions that come along with finding your truth, and you have to be ready. You have to be mentally stable, because when you start realizing some of the stuff that you thought was love and found out after all this time what it really was, that thing can devastate you all by itself. And if you don't have those in your circle, or those that are in your family, that you can talk to, because what happens when family is the offender, you know and so now who do you talk to? What did you say? Go talk to your pastor. Well, my pastor's family too. And so um how do you get to that place of wholeness, to the point where you can say, you know what, when I look back over that now, that was all me. I don't know why I blamed, or why I was looking at, so and so, when truth truth be told, that was all me. And I can own that and be healed by that, because that takes care of one open wound that has been getting infected year after year after year, because truth never met it. And so we just kept on patching it up, because when we saw truth, we shut down. And so what do you do when you finally are willing to come and accept that realization that, yeah, it wasn't them this time. That was all me. I say to my besties sometime when we be talking, and we'll say something that happened and we like, the devil. I said, child, that wasn't even the devil. That was all Nita. And we laugh about it, but it's just a real thing. We blame the devil for so much, and he just sitting back laughing because we doing his work. He didn't do it. And as crazy as some of the stuff is that we've experienced, we have to understand that some of it is, most of it is God ordained, because it can't happen if he doesn't allow it. What would Job have done if he didn't have the faith that he had in God? Now, Job is a good brother. You hear me? Because I love Jesus with everything in me, and I always say, Lord, I just want to go back to heaven with you. But honey, if I lost all my children and all my good treasures and stuff, I can't tell you. I'd still say, though he slay me, yet will I trust him. I can't. I'm hoping that I would be in a place of my faith that I could. But to just tell you, honey, because if that was no, because I tell people all the time, don't say to me, if I was you, because if you were me, you'd be doing the same thing I'm doing because you would then be me. So try another sentence. It's gotten old and it doesn't mean anything, because if you don't know what it is to be me, you can't. You can't answer that. You can't respond in that way. You know. So um, you just um, I never say to you guys anything that we haven't had to do ourselves, whether it be myself talking or my bestie. We never say anything or give you advice to something or give a suggestion of anything that we haven't at one time or another had to do ourselves. And this is why we don't have a problem with being transparent, because I feel like if we were, if they were as transparent back in the day as we are, as some of us are in today's time, I think that a lot more souls would have been freed a lot sooner, you know, because um, the picture, the illustration was made of perfection. It never gave you room to think that there were errors that caused that perfection to be what you saw it as. Because the truth of the matter is, even though it looked like it was perfect to us, they still weren't living a perfect life. And so, because there was a lack of transparency, because it was a speak when spoken to, because it was, if you have a question, you were rebellious and you were talking back. There was so many things. There was such a breach in communication in the days of old and now, that we are trying to play catch up with. And then some of us are trying so hard that we're going overboard. We just accepted too much. We're too tangible. We're too common. We're too familiar. And then when people lose the respect, we want to know, well, what happened? And when you're trying to demand it, you want to know why they laughing. It's because you overstepped some boundaries that let them know that, hey, I can get down with you. I can talk to you, but at the end of the day, just remember who I am. So what happens when who I am turns out to be the problem? I mean, up until now, you don't feel like you're the problem because nobody has had the nerve, for lack of better words, to come and say something to you, and everybody's waiting for the next person. You got a whole crowd of people that have the same concern or the same issue, but nobody wants to be the one to step up and be the spokesperson, and so therefore the problem continues to go on until somebody explodes. And that shouldn't have to be. And so Tanasia, taking accountability about decisions we make is a great big start. A great big start. Let's go all the way back to the garden. Adam could have simply just took the blame, but no, he wanted to blame the woman that God gave him when God didn't ask him about the women. He asked him about him, what he was supposed to do, what he had been instructed. And so, many of us, even today, let's talk about the truth, will try to blame it on somebody else or pass the buck on somebody else. Anything that's going to take the light off me, thinking that, making it seem like I'm the one, it's because of me, or I told them to do that. And that's why this happening, So what happens when you finally get up in the middle to say, you know what, that was all me and I need to apologize? Can you do that? That was all me and I sincerely apologize. Can you forgive me? Can you really? Are you really willing to do that? Because it's the requirement. If you're of Christ, if you're a true disciple, because when he made disciples, they weren't just Christians. They went above and beyond. That's how they became disciples. And they had a set accountability. Hmm? And so what happens when you become healed and you find out you're the reason why somebody is not? Will you take accountability? Would you say, Bestie? That's how Tanasia says that's how it's going to be Judgment Day. He's not going to ask about what others did, but he's going to ask what we did. It's really personal. And I say that all the time, EIT. I say that. I say that. When you get ready to do something, your reaction, and I use the word reaction because most people react instead of responding. You react and say God came today and he took you straight to the gate. When he gets you up there and he says, what happened to you here? And you say, well, Cousin Sally. No. He don't care about Cousin Sally because he going to deal with Cousin Sally. But right now he's talking about you, his child, his servant. He's talking about your response because that's what it should have been, a response to what took place. Because you'll never be able to say you've dealt with more than him. You'll never be able to say. You'll never be able to say you shut up as long as he did while he went through what he went through. Many of us wouldn't last past the first trial. And so when do we take that responsibility, that level of accountability? Oh my God. And most of it is pride because you don't want to have to go back and apologize to anybody. Huh? And pride comes before the fall. Now, for me, like when my bestie and I first started this walk of a friendship, she used to say to me, because I had a matter-of-factly opinion about everything based on how I was brought up in church. And she was like, you can't do that. You so stern and you so hard. And that's why people scared to talk to you. I said, they ain't scared to talk to me. They know they got to come correct. But then after saying it, hearing her say it so many times, what did I have to do? I had to reconsider it and at least give it, a thought, because this is somebody that we are now starting to call each other friend. And we're now working together, both naturally and spiritually. And so if I'm not willing to listen to her, then how can I expect her to hear me? And there are those people out there that only want you to hear what, ask my landlord. There's just some people that just want you to hear them. And when you start talking common sense, they be like, we'll just talk later. Yeah. And so what happens when your healing calls for an apology? What happens? Truthfully, what happens when your healing calls for an apology? Not because the preacher told you, not because the teacher told you, but because God himself has dealt with you. And the problem you said came from everybody else was just a magnifying glass of you. Now I got to go back to all them folk and apologize. I ain't got to have no long dissertation, no long conversation. Just, hey, can I speak to you for a moment? There were some things that have been said and done between us, and I don't care to go back through it, but I just want you to know from my heart to yours that I truly apologize, and I hope that you can forgive me. And if we can move on from here in a more positive way. Doesn't require much more than that. It just requires a willing spirit. Now, you have to be, what they tell us, remorseful. Another word for that is humble, as my bestie is helping me. Thank you. You got to be humble. You got to remember that you ain't the only one that got a thought. Some people can't handle somebody having a difference of opinion from them. I'm not sure why. Now, that is not something I had a problem with. My problem was I can admit that we don't see differently, and I can't call you wrong, but I need you to feel the same way. Like, you have to be willing to give me an ear as well. A conversation is not a conversation with only one person. Because when you start conversating and responding with yourself, then I'm going to move over and wait till y'all get finished. And then I'm going to ask if I could join the conversation. Because I want to make sure you hear me. And I'm not being sarcastic. There are some people who really do have the whole conversation before they get to you. They've already decided what you're going to say. And we've counseled, oh my goodness, we've counseled so many that said all of this stuff. And when we get the two people together and one is looking like, what they talking about? And I said, well, the person didn't say that to you? No, but I just knew that. So you had a whole conversation that the person never knew they had. And you're responding to it. And so what we need to do, because many of us are good at telling folk what they need to do. But are you woman enough? Are you man enough to tell yourself what you need to do? Are you woman enough? Are you man enough to put your pride aside and understand that sometimes you really might be the problem? It's not always somebody else. That's all I'm saying. I feel, I'm real passionate about it because people tend to think that because we don't agree that we can't have conversation. That's why you have a prosecutor in the courtroom and a defense attorney. Two different sides trying to argue the same story from a different point of view. Strongest argument wins every time. Doesn't mean that the person got off was innocent, but that their counsel had a better argument. And so sometimes we have to accept the fall for the greater good. Because if you don't, my children, as they, were PKs, they still are PKs. They weren't starting out as PKs and being attached to different ministries and helping different ones in ministries. Their question would constantly come to me and say, how come we always gotta be the example? And many of you would probably say, well, you're the pastor's kids. No, it's not that simple. What they meant was that we were under people or attached to those and taking instruction. We're here as a part of you to help you. But yet we tended to be the example. We had to show up. Well, they had to show up when nobody else did. And I say they because I would say, I don't care who don't show up. Guess who's going to show up? I don't care who doesn't agree. Guess what we're going to do? And I hold that even now in ministry, no matter who I cover, no matter what's attached to me, if I say this is what we're going to do, then this is what we're going to do, no matter whether anybody else does it or not. We will not have the testimony of doing anything contrary to what's being spoken. Hey, Melissa. We won't be part of that. We're going to do what's right. We're going to function in order as closely as possible because we operate to the best of our ability in the spirit of excellence, trying to serve a good, great, wonderful God the best way we can, and to be a representative that will not make him be ashamed. And so sometimes the problem is really us. And if you've been living your whole life and you feel like you ain't never been wrong, I'm glad you're there and we're here. Because I would be afraid, because at any given time, God could come back. And because you feel like you've never been wrong in your entire life, oh my. Some people used to say that to me. Oh, you think you the only one? No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, just like you want me to hear your opinion, I need you to hear mine. You don't have to agree, but I listen to you, so now I need you to listen to me. Sometimes it's as simple as that. Understanding that I'm not saying that you're wrong. What I'm saying to you is this is what I believe. And I'm entitled to that. And then maybe at some point in our conversation, we could come to a halfway point where, while I may not totally agree with you, we do have some things in common. And so the other things we know, hey, when it comes to that, that's not where I want to go. When it comes to that, that's not where you want to go, because we've already established boundaries and we know how far we can go with each other in certain conversations. And I just think that if many people did that, we wouldn't have so many people falling out. We're at a crucial time, and the church really needs to get it together. And we really need to come back to a place where God would be so proud and so pleased of us, because we are the peacemakers that He created us to be. We are the worshipers that He created us to be. We are the disciples that He created us to be. We are His creation, and we should be resembling Him to the best of our ability. You have some on one hand that's trying so hard that they're just extraordinary, they're just over the top. And then we have those that think that they're there and they don't know whether to move up or down. And then we have those who are watching these two scenarios and wondering which way they should go, because there are people watching you that will never tell you. And so what happens when the problem is really me? God help. Because that's what you need. God help. Maybe you don't believe in God. Whatever power you believe in, higher power, because I found that some people don't believe in God, but they do believe in a higher power. To me, it is Him. He is the ultimate higher power. But I would never condemn you, because I still got room. Some of us, if we sat down and read about some of these other things, especially religions that we don't associate with, we'll find out that we have more things in common. My first reality in that vein was Islam. We just knew we wasn't supposed to be bothered with them, so we were taught or whatever. But when you look at the Quran versus the Bible, our version of the Bible is there's not much difference. And then when you talk about reverence, the difference is they stop at Jesus being the master prophet, whereas we see the Trinity, that God is the ultimate, who sent Himself wrapped up in His Son down here. So what happens when the problem is really me? For those of us who love the Lord, our first place would be prayer. Our first place would be prayer. And as we learned on last night, not going and I don't want to say it wrong. You don't want to go to God just because people told you that that's how you communicate with God, through prayer. You want to, when I say you want to go to God in prayer, when you find out that the problem is really you want to get in front of God's face. You want to lay prostrate, whatever way you already been praying, you need to find another way. Change your position, change your attitude, so that you can go to the place that you really need to be, which is in God's presence, and really asking Him for help, and really asking Him to help creating you a clean heart, as the scripture says, asking Him to purge you, to cleanse you. Yes, most times it's a painful process, because we still got stuff that we don't want to let go of. So when we say to God sincerely from everything within us that we want Him to cleanse us, that we want Him to change us, that stuff gonna hurt, because you gotta let go what you've been holding on to for so long. You've worn it on you as a part of your garment for so long that you feel naked. And so you want to, I can't say it enough. Like we always say, hey, we try not to shove Jesus down your throat. But y'all know y'all talking to apostles. And so it's kind of hard to never, let you know that He is the answer. And He is the only way. And He is the ultimate factor. And He does have the final say. You know, um, we like to give you the opportunity of balance and letting you know that we're human too. God is the only one that I've known to be all God and all man, you know? And so um, when I go back to me and my children, or my children and I for you English majors, um, I had to know or help them understand when mommy was talking versus when their pastor was talking. Because I wanted them to understand that I still understood them as a mother to her children. But I still had to ultimately let them know that I was their pastor too, and that they had to accept both of us. Why did I do it that way? Because I wanted them to know that I understood their feelings. I understood the place that they were coming from. But after hearing you and understanding you, I still have to come and talk to you as your leader. How you put the two of them together to make it work for you would be up to you and God. But I would have done my part. And so, my mom, I love her life. She was my rebuker. She was my protector at the same time. My what you call it, the exhorter. Like she did things to uplift me in every way, but she just did not like the fact that I gave my children such liberty in conversation. She just couldn't understand. She said, "You in this New Day church?" She used to say those things, or my land, you know, uh, just little things, never causing, arguments with us. She just didn't think that I should have been sharing as much information with my children, especially when it came to like birth control and things like that. Oh my God, she would be going through the floor. But I just have always raised my children to be comfortable with telling me things, even if I'm uncomfortable with what it is. I want to be the first to know. I don't want to be the last to know. And even with our children, what happens if the problem is really us? We're so quick to reprimand our children and discipline them, but what if we are the cause? I think that there's a very good reason why the Bible says that we should not provoke our children to wrath. It had to be pinned for a reason. Something happened, that shouldn't have. And so that's all I needed to know. Did I do everything right? No. But I remember, whether it be my children, whether it be my mother, whether it be my husband when I was married, the Bible says that we don't go to bed angry. Don't let the sun go down on your wrath, is what it says. And so we have to be careful. We have to be careful in everything. So what happens when the problem is really me? I ask God for all the help I can handle. And sometimes, oh my God, hey, Pastor Tracy. Sometimes, um, it's hurtful sometimes when you realize that you're the problem, especially when you went out your way to prove that you were right in a situation that God now lets you know you were wrong, just totally wrong. And so you got you got to get over yourself, quick, fast, and in a hurry. Because if you want God to continue to answer you and respond to you, you have to first do what is required of you. And so, what happens when the problem is really you? Like I said in the very beginning of tonight, even though this is loving the me I see, and we talk about how we learning to love the me we see unapologetically, and understanding that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, and yada yada yada, all of the things that we say to you all to make sure you understand that you have a right to feel what you feel, that you have a right to love you without people's opinions, that we can love ourselves with flaws and all, through the shame and all of that we can learn. But what happens when that whole person shows up, when all of you has been delivered and set free, and you can now say, I'm whole? What happens now that you're whole and you still find out that the problem was really you? To each of us, I'm sure we would have different answers because no two people are the same. Might think something alike, but not exactly. I think it was more scary for even me and my bestie to find out how like minded we were in vision and in desires and just the way that it has worked for us for 15 years. Ooh, most marriages these days is not lasting that long, but I thank God, I thank God, I thank God. What happens when the problem is really me? Tanasia's last statement is that purging ain't no joke. Sidebar. Never mind. The purging it ain't no joke. That's what Tanasia says. But it's removing everything that's not like him. I found myself at the altar a lot, but I'd rather be at the altar rather than acting like I don't have issues. Very well stated. Purging is no joke. It just really isn't. I have to agree with you. I go back to the days of old. The purging that y'all experience now, that's New Day purging. That's New Day purging. We was on the floor, foaming at the mouth, calling on Jesus till it sounded like it was a tongue. Uh, Mothers wrapping you with a sheet and one on each of the four corners to make sure you ain't go no further. Man, they used to have bags just at the altar and making sure that it never went back into the hands of anything unclean or that it never went back into the garbage cans that were already in use. It was so much. They really yes, New Day Virgin. It's like finding out, like for me, and I can just keep using me because some of y'all are afraid to be transparent, and I'll give you that room. But being able to truly say, hey, you know what? I need to come back to you and apologize because I realized the problem was really me. It was the way I misunderstood or the way I saw things. Because I tell people all the time, Overseer Armin says it all the time. One person's perception is another person's reality, and sometimes we're responding in a way. Oh, that's cute. It's not trying to piece of cake. Look, y'all, look at my besties projects. Hmm? Coach pocketbook. There's gonna be stuff in here though. What happens? I mean, you when you finally, it's like that come to Jesus moment we be talking about a lot of times. It's a real place. Um, I find myself even as an apostle in the Lord's church that I am at that altar as much as I can be, as much as I can be. I don't care what anybody thinks about me at that point. What matters to me is that God sees me and that He understands why I'm at that altar. I need God in my life daily, and I cannot afford for Him to remove me from His hand or to turn His face from me or His ear from my mouth. I just, I am not willing to risk it. And so, what happens when the problem is really me? I ask God to help me. That's what I do. I ask God to help me. I ask Him to redirect me. I ask Him to show me other ways to deal with the same situation with the person so that I could be more clear about what was really meant and not the way it was taken. Excuse me. So there's some things, when it's all said and done, what happens when the problem is really me is what are you going to do about the me? You spend enough time talking about the other person, but what you going to do about me? You know, um, and most there are those, I won't say most, there are those that when you're trying to help them see who they really are and they don't like where you're going, they'll leave you, go to the next place. Guess what? You still gonna show up there. Maybe by the time you get to the fifth church, because that, and I'm not exaggerating, by the time you get to the fifth church and they still saying the same thing, I'm 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 sorry. I'm sorry that you are taking these leaders through that, because it's obvious that wherever you are is the problem. So when are you going to change it? What is it about you that needs to change? You can't be quick to talk about others and not be ready for yourself. You're putting yourself up for a great fall. That wasn't for y'all. I'm watching my cat scrape all that doggone litter out this pot. Like she the one got cleaned it up. So, on another note, I love you guys. Can't say it enough. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for participating in the conversation. Yes, the cat. My ESA, my little Shih Tzu, is over here quiet in her cage, looking up at me while I'm doing this live. While my cat is in the corner in her litter box, scraping all of the doggone litter out. I'm gonna put her on the altar, and she stink. Woo, like a grown person. So, guys, again, I was saying that I love you. Goldie Tika said, hey, I love you guys. Thank you for showing up. If it were not for you, I wouldn't have anybody to conversate with. Um, and I appreciate your prayers for those of you who have been reaching out to me. I'm not at 100%, but I'm gradually easing my way back in. Hopefully, God will say the same and say the same for me in these coming weeks. We are going back to that time where we say if there's something that you would like for us to talk about, make sure that somehow, guys, we could come back and connect it to bettering ourselves, um, or finding out another way to deal with life situations that, kind of like throw us to the left. Um, can you show the pocketbook again? Um, Queen Apostle, I'm being asked to show the pocketbook again. Um, if you guys,
it's all different kinds. That's just one that I started.
It's not the one you just had.
That is the one I just had.
Not. It was pink.
What happened?
This is another one. You had pink.
No, I didn't. That's the only one I made
Oh,
tonight.
I wish I could go back in this day.
Well, you go back.
I'm be mad at that.
Yes, it's just the same thing.
How much? Wait, you got to know what you didn't even ask what come in it.
Who is that?
Melissa, you want to know what come in it?
Bath and Body Works. Any
Bath and Body Work products.
It's 35.
And they $35.
I had different designs.
She had different designs. So again, I was saying I love you guys. I appreciate you. Continue to stick with us. Again, if there are things that you want to see us talk about, as long as we can find a way to make it come back to us, we're bettering ourselves, getting in a better place of forgiveness, becoming more like Christ. Apostle, how are you, kind sir? We have been lifting you up in prayer. Yes, we have. In our corporate prayers on Thursday. Yes, we have. We are still yet praying for you. Still, even now. It's okay. So you guys meet us here next week. Tell somebody what we're talking about now, because maybe somebody will play this back and say, you know what? I hope I get there in time next week. What happens when the problem is really me? What happens when the problem is really me? We blame other folk for so long, But what happens when the problem is really me? And so that's where we started today. And that's where we're going to end now. I don't want to stay on too long because I haven't been coming on because of my health. And we don't want to overdo it tonight, but we just could not let another week go by and not do it. And so continue to pray for us as we continue to pray for you. Um, my bestie's getting ready to pray us out. She was working on projects, but she heard the whole live tonight, and so she was helping me in the background. Um, and so we always like for her to have some last words and pray us out, and so she can see that I'm being obedient and I'm not staying on for a long time tonight. Lord, your apostle will be praying for you. Apostle Jackson, he's on here now, but he said he heading back to New Jersey because his sister passed away. So come on, bestie.
Good live tonight. I'm so short I could get on my knees and you can still see me. Good live tonight. I pray that something you have said, something that Apostle have said tonight have touched you. Blessings to everyone. I'm just on here to pray. Good live tonight. Ask yourself that question. What happens when the problem is really me? Why am I still by myself? Why am I still alone? Why I don't have no friends? Why everybody I run into run away from me after 2 months? Question yourself. Is the problem really me? Do I need to change my attitude? Do I need to change my tone? Do I need to change the way I question yourself? Get you a checklist and go down that list and see what you can change about you. Somebody told me if everybody is saying the same thing, then boo, it's you. Love you all.
Everybody can't be wrong.
Hey, Tika. Father, in Jesus' name, we thank you and we praise you for this live. We thank you as we do our spot check. Father, that you will help us to realize where we need to come up, what we need to change. We thank you and we praise you as always for our apostle. Look on Bishop Apostle Jackson as he traveled back to Jersey. Give him strength, cover him under your blood. We thank you and we praise you tonight for all things. Keep us is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen.
Love you guys. See you next week, 9:15.